I had a post about me going no contact with my mother and how I've never done that in my entire life. This year, last holidays was really, really difficult, traumatic, and I finally drew the line and said, this is abusive, and stepped away. And I told my mom that I would not continue to hang out with her as if everything was fine because she said and did really hurtful things. And I need to know that she's sorry for that. Otherwise, what's to keep me from thinking that she's not going to continue to treat me in those ways? Which, having this year, because she has not reached back with real remorse or even saying sorry this entire year, realizing that she's never done that. She's never acknowledged the fucked up things that she's done and said, I am sorry. I realize now that the things I did may have hurt you, and I love you, and I wouldn't want to hurt you. And I'm sorry that that's what had to happen, or whatever it is. Just show genuine remorse. And there's something about having genuine remorse that, to me, equals love and caring. Having empathy for somebody that you're in relationship with, whether that's a family member, a friend, a partner, whatever the relationship is, even just like coworkers or bosses or people on the street. I mean, when we do something, even if it's unconscious, even if it's because we're wounded people and we're just kind of living from that place, I have understanding and compassion for people who do hurtful things to other people. I understand that they are unconscious and acting out of wounded places, and I understand how trauma gets passed on. I absolutely do. But it doesn't excuse their behavior automatically, which is something that I've realized that I've done my whole life, basically, because I grew up in an environment where, in an explosion of emotion, there would be insults and attacks thrown my way, like insulting me, attacking me. And later on, everyone would act like everything was okay. So it was really this ambivalent love attachment style that my mother had to me, where she was tearing me down and attacking me as if I was her worst enemy one minute, and the next minute she was acting like everything was okay. But the one thing that I realized this year was that I never really got, nurturing and caring and love and attunement from her. And so I started to ask this question, well, what is love? How do you, what is love? How do you know someone loves you? Is it because they say it, or is it because they show it? And how do they show it? And I started to really ask these questions this year and really analyze that. And, parallel to all of that I've been exploring within myself, I've been reading a lot about narcissistic abuse and survivors of narcissistic abuse, because my mom is an alcoholic. But when I went to Al-Anon, I realized, my problem isn't just because my mom's an alcoholic. When she's sober, I have issues with her too. And it wasn't really addressing the whole situation of the challenge I was having with my mom, because it wasn't just because she was drinking. If she was a person that drank alcohol and did a lot of shitty stuff and then got sober and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and admitted that, she did stuff that was hurtful and harmful and that she does care, I would be so quick to forgive her. Even if that pattern kept happening, because I understand that addiction and alcoholism is a disease. It is an intense struggle for one's autonomy and control in her life. And I get that. I've seen that. I've seen my mom struggle with that. And so I realized that throughout my life, I've really remained connected to her in the hopes that my love and my affection and my presence and my support could help her recover. But within this year, I've really reflected a lot on my life and realized that even when alcohol wasn't the predominant problem with her, there wasn't love, there wasn't nurturing, there was attacks, there was insults, and then there was never acknowledgement of those things. And so in a sense, I've lived my entire life never having closure or being able to reconcile with her. It's like this unconscious implicit expectation in my family of origin that once someone does something terrible, we don't talk about it. And then what I've learned also growing up, that when I talk about it, I will be the victim of another attack of rage. That's that narcissistic rage. When you confront them with their bad behavior, they lash out at you and you are the enemy and you are the problem, and they turn it on you, and they do this mind fuck basically of a conversation, and you leave completely disoriented and confused because there's gaslighting, there's blame, there's projection, there's so many things that happen, instead of them hearing you and your concern and the fact that in the relationship you're having difficulty and you want to seek a way to work together to create a more harmonious relationship. You never get that opportunity with these people. And I've realized that even, like, I really never wanted to say this to myself or out loud, or I don't know, I would always make excuses for her. But I realized that there is quite literally no empathy. I've seen her care about other people. Like, she worries a lot. She has anxiety. And I interpreted that as her caring. But when it comes to her really toxic treatment to other people, she has absolutely no empathy or remorse and sees nothing wrong with it. And so to me, there is a lack of empathy. And I don't know if having anxiety and worry is empathy. It's made me ask a lot of questions about just, I don't know, a lot of these things. So what I was wanting to really talk about also, so this is the personal stuff going on. So I've been really drawn and attracted to watching documentaries about people who are recovering from cults, from the abuse in cults. And, there, like, I have watched, there's lots of things coming out on Netflix and Amazon, and I've just been on this binge thing watching it. I've really been on this binge of watching these videos because there's so much that resonates with me in my healing journey. And I'm thinking, well, how is my situation like a cult? And I started to realize that our family of origin, and the way that we, relate to each other, the way that we share our emotions, the way that we convey our feelings, our needs, our desires, our wants, and get our needs met, and all of these things that we do, and where there's two people working together, or oftentimes in the situation not working together, how they make this work. I've realized that the family of origin is a lot like a cult, because a lot of these things are what I would say is implicit, or they're unconscious. They're not like explicitly said out loud, like, you don't talk to me about the things I've done to you, or else I'm going to rage out on you and make you feel like crap, and you'll walk away confused. No one says that. It just happens. And the theme that you see in these cult videos is that people who are recovering from a cult have a moment where they get perspective, and they wake up to, oh my God, this thing that they're doing is extremely abusive and wrong. Despite the fact that they've been raised, many of them have been raised, or they've been indoctrinated into a cult and been told over and over that this is for the greater good, or this is normal. So they normalize abusive behavior. So the thing that I realized that I am paralleling with the cult recovery, is abuse recovery, in the fact of being surrounded in a micro environment, or in a bigger environment with larger cults, of being isolated in an environment where abuse has been normalized. Abuse has been normalized. And when I started to reflect on that, how has abuse been normalized? It gets into a bigger context. It kind of goes out further on a macro context. And I realized that culture is a lot like cults, right? There are things that are normalized. There are things that are shamed. You get shunned for certain reasons if you disagree with other people. I mean, the things that cults do to people that disempower them, that get them to be like sheep following the herd in really subtle ways, is what culture does. And so I always have realized that I have a personal healing journey that has to do with my family of origin. And then I have the healing journey of healing from our culture, right? Our culture has many, many imbalances and abusive tactics that are normalized. The thing with healing your family of origin stuff is that, you know, just like when you are recovering from a cult, the second you realize the things that are happening are abuse and that they're not okay, and you draw the line, you're outcasted and shunned. And first of all, what happens is the people that are still within that dynamic, the cult or the family, ingrain themselves even deeper into their belief systems to justify any cognitive dissonance they may have, that your words, which are illuminating the shadow of what's happening, they want to refuse it so much, because if they start to open up to the fact that, hey, maybe this one thing is abusive, and then it makes them question everything, it's much easier for them to ingrain their feet even deeper into their belief system and hold on to the reality. And there's been a lot of science and research that shows, like, scientists actually have been studied when they are confronted with findings and research that contradict their own, they will make a bunch of excuses to why those facts aren't right. Without even really looking at the research, they immediately reject it because it doesn't fit within their paradigm. It's that it's like a cult. So this cult thing, it translates. Even though there is a lot of cults and people coming out of cults, and there's a lot of illumination about the dysfunction in these cults and the mistreatment of human beings, especially children, in these cults, I see that this is totally translatable into all the different cultures and subcultures we have, even countercultures that we have, like the New Age movement. They all have a shadow side. And when there's a shadow side to a cult or culture, it's what's unconscious and unknown. It's what people don't want to look at, because if they look at it, it unravels their entire perception of reality. And it challenges them in a way that their ego is very defensive to protect what it is that they know to be true for themselves, even if they've been told what's true, instead of been supported to be a critical thinker and discover what's true for them. So in cults, they, like, a big part of how cults are so successful at getting so many followers to just do a lot of things that, most people would have an internal response of no to, because slowly over time, they remove their ability to think critically for themselves, or they shame people who think critically for themselves. And so in order to be accepted and belong, which are huge, 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 huge human needs, is to belong and be accepted. And one of the biggest human fears is to be ostracized and shunned. Why? Because historically, think about it, we are pack animals. If we were shunned or ostracized, we would die. We are pack animals, basically. We need our tribe in order to survive and thrive. So when we are ostracized, that is a fear of death. I mean, it's literally like a death. Plus, we bond with people in our tribe, in our cult, in our culture. And to be ostracized is the biggest insult to our ego, of feeling like we're not good enough somehow. And so that fear itself is enough to motivate people to stay within a place where intuitively and instinctually, and their body is telling them that this is not safe or good. They will stay because they're getting basic human needs of belonging and being accepted. They're getting those met. So this whole idea that recovery of cults is actually very translatable to the healing, what Carl Jung might call the individuation process, which is basically like self-realization, becoming really self-aware and conscious, is something that many of us struggle with, because the second we start to move into that space, we challenge everyone around us, and we become like a reminder to other people of what they haven't been listening to within themselves. And so the parts of them that they're not listening to inside themselves, they have rejected and suppressed so for so long that they're completely disassociated from it, like intuition and our emotions and our feelings and our body sensations. That's why we have so much illness. Those things come up as communicators that something isn't safe or something isn't wrong, or like this is harmful to you, because our emotions, our mind, our body, all of that is so intertwined. And so we slowly become disempowered. So I just started to really see a lot of parallels. Like, why am I watching all these things on cults? And then I'm watching them, and as I'm watching these cult videos for like the last couple months and doing this healing journey with my mom, and also writing about cultural shadows, like around anomalous experiences for my thesis, I realized that they're all so interrelated, because there's these themes of needing to belong, wanting to be accepted, the fear of being ostracized, and feeling like you're not allowed to point out the elephant in the room of this isn't okay. I mean, there's social psychology studies where they have a table of like 12 people, and 11 of the people are in on the experiment. So there's only one person who's coming in and sitting down who's doing the experiment, but they think everyone else is doing the experiment like them, but they're actually part of the experiment. So they will show people like lines, 3 different lines that are different sizes, and they'll ask the group, which line do you think is the longest? And they'll test them individually, and they'll find like the person will honestly say which one's the longest. But when they open up to the group for them to hear each other, something different happens. The person who is joining the experiment hears like all 11 other people will say that B is longer than A, when A is clearly longer than B, and they'll have a moment of cognitive dissonance, like everyone else sees B as being longer, but I see A as being longer. I must be wrong. So they actually change their answer to what everyone else says. So there's so much power in like group mindset, because I think that we're not raised to be so in touch with ourselves that we are constantly, and also our culture is so primitive when it comes to emotional intelligence, that many of us are raised and we don't know what our emotions are for or how to handle them. We don't understand the messages they're trying to relay to us. And we're actually taught not to trust our emotions and to just be happy, and everything else is shamed. So when we come into a situation where we are having emotions that seem to be different than where everyone else is responding to, instead of saying, what's wrong with the situation, we say, what's wrong with us? Because everybody else is responding to the situation differently than I am. And that's how indoctrination happens. And that's why I think family of origins are really similar to cults. You know, you're a child, you're growing up, and your dad and your mom or brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, grandparents, they're all from the same family. The trauma's been passed on and passed on. Just through observing everything that may feel sick and gross and wrong to you is normalized, because you see everyone else is acting like everything's okay. And so you internalize, oh, there must be something wrong with me. It's okay because they see it's okay. And that's how abuse gets normalized. Now, one thing I wanted to share with you guys, I know this, I don't want to do too long of a video, but a warning. I want a warning for all of you, because I know a lot of you are very empathic and you've had, you know, you're sensitive and you maybe have traumatic childhoods. I don't know. Or at least have challenging relationships with people. I mean, we all do. I think that's inevitable. But one thing that I really wanted to say was that, you know, be careful as you're on the healing path. I found that a lot of spiritual perspectives, you know, in the cult like New Age movement is, you know, be compassionate and, you know, love each other unconditionally, you know, is like the ultimate goal. And that doesn't mean subject yourself over and over again to unremorseful, abusive people. It doesn't. And my challenge has been that I had surrounded myself with other people who were doing really abusive things because I didn't recognize them as abuse. In my mind, those things were normal because that's what I grew up with. So when I started to wake up to these things are really abusive and harmful, and I started to really draw a line I started to realize how easily, when you're within the cult mind frame, the culture mind frame, or your family of origin mind frame, that you can become, that the abuse becomes invisible. Like, we're completely unaware that it's abusive. And so as you're moving into adulthood and healing and making new connections and doing your own healing journey, make sure that you're not allowing situations that are extremely abusive to happen to you because of that normalization. Start to really explore and search for what is real, like, supporting love, and what is, damaging. And I know I'm using the word abuse a lot. And when I say abuse, what I mean is anything that rejects you, your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas. People who say that you're wrong when really your opinion and your emotion can never be wrong. I mean, that's just your reality in that moment. Like, I'm feeling this. No, that's wrong. And it's like, how is that wrong? It's mine. It's not yours, right? That happens a lot in our culture. I would consider that abuse because that creates that cognitive dissonance. It creates a situation where people are mirroring back to us that our thoughts and feelings aren't correct. And that does so much harm in the long run because we start to really disassociate from listening to our intuition. We just start to disassociate from listening to our gut feelings, to the things that are, really part of our soul communicating faculty to help us navigate this world safely. And so it puts us into dangerous situations time and time again. And so these are just things to think about if you're at all interested in these, if you've been healing on any of these levels, if you're interested in cult stuff. I mean, all of this is pertinent to every single one of us because we are in a culture, and our culture is kind of dismantled, like disintegrating right now in many ways, and things are becoming illuminated, and people are having aha moments and they're starting to recognize things, but we're still within the culture. So the trouble with healing from culture is not like cult recovery or family of origin recovery, where you can separate yourself from all of that and start to build your own life, because we're still in culture. Like, that's the thing about culture, is we can't really separate from it. We're within it, all the time. It surrounds us. But this is like the hugest piece that has been the most healing and helpful for me in my healing process, is surrounding myself with other people who are really waking up to this stuff and aren't normalizing abusive behavior, who are really questioning things and curious and open-minded about exploring, why is this okay? Is it okay? Why does it not feel okay? Why do they say it's okay when it doesn't feel okay to me? And really exploring these things and thinking critically and coming up with your own conclusions about things in a supportive environment that isn't going to ostracize you or shun you for asking questions. I mean, that is essential. So even though we are surrounded in culture, there are subcultures that you can create for yourself, and you can start to recover. And honestly, like, this perspective puts so many words to things that I've gone through in healing. The idea of recovery. I mean, that's literally what I feel like I've been doing this whole healing journey, is recovering me, recovering myself. The child me that had to completely disassociate just to fit in and be loved and accepted and belong. And then reclaiming that inner child, through all those different ages, all those different inner children, reclaiming them and saying, no, your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas, they are valid. They're okay. You're allowed to have those. Which was what I did not hear that from my teachers. I didn't hear that from my peers. I didn't hear that from my family. I didn't hear that from my parents. Like, just giving me the things that I needed in my childhood so that I can feel safe and secure and whole again. And that I don't have to split off pieces of myself just to fit in. And so that is like ultimately the whole healing process. Even Carl Jung talks about individuation as really exploring the shadow, which are all the disassociated pieces that we've rejected, and how culture does have a lot to do with that. But he didn't really talk a lot about, this idea of the cultural shadow, which is something that I'm really interested in, because honestly, all of the energies that I'm moving into are the things that are really undervalued and or shamed in our culture, because those are the areas that are least developed within me because I haven't been allowed to explore those things. And so I'm doing that, and I'm creating a safe space for me to do that and surrounding myself with other people who I can explore with, and it makes all the difference. So cult recovery requires you to be surrounded by other people who are not within that same paradigm, who aren't going to shun you and give you that cognitive dissonance. The whole idea is that in a healthy relationship, there is an emotional attunement and mirroring. The mirroring is one person mirroring to another, what they see. Like, I see that you're saying this, like showing that they understand what the person's saying, but also mirroring to them the goodness and the lovability and the good qualities in the person, instead of what we get from culture, which is mirroring. No, be like this. That is wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. Don't do that. Don't do this. All the shoulds and the rules and all of that. That's not mirroring. That's projecting. And so we've been projected on basically our whole life. So it's really about cleaning that mirror. And I think that it's inevitable to, when you start to do this healing journey, that you start to be that mirror for other people. And ultimately you become a healer, no matter what kind of job you are, have, whether you're a banker or you're a customer service representative, or I don't know, you work for the county. It doesn't matter what job you have. When you start to really clean your mirror, you get to reflect back to people the beauty of who they are, the truth of who they are, and give them permission to really be back in touch with themselves again, because you are. And that is like the most beautiful message of all of this, is that as we start to heal from culture, as we start to heal from our family of origin, as we start to heal from, if you've been in a cult or religion, as you start to heal from that, we ultimately start to spread that awareness and that clarity that we have and that empowerment that we get by reclaiming these pieces.